can't fall asleep, he somehow found out about my affair on a work party. When we got home, he said this: "Ladies and gentlemen, I've discovered something. I now know how to get away with having an affair." To be honest, when I discovered this trick, I was speechless. Words could not explain how I felt. You want to know the secret? All right, come closer and I will tell you. The secret to having an affair and still staying happily married is to not have an affair. I am serious. Do not even bother trying. Oh, you have a plan? The plan will fail. You figured out a flawless method? You will be the one who would suffer the flaws. You have a harmless way of going about it? It will come back and bite you where it will hurt the most. Listen, people, there is no plan made on this earth that would not crumble when it comes to having an extramarital affair. How can I be so sure? Because if there was such a plan, then I would not be telling you this story. Or maybe I would. All I am saying is that things don't always work the way we want it to. Are you still confused? It's all right. Just get comfortable because this could take a while. Now, before I tell you why I said no plan could be made to have an affair and also a happy marriage, let me tell you a little bit about myself and the lucky man who made me the luckiest gal on planet Earth. Well, that is until I wasn't anymore. My name is Dolly Logan and I was born in West Virginia. My parents had 7 children and I happened to be the 6th child and also a twin. My twin brother's name is Damien and well, we were spoiled brats. I know this may sound weird, calling myself a spoiled brat, but it's true. My parents and siblings said that it took quite some time before we were born, and to make matters worse, we came out after 10 months of being in our mother's womb, so you can understand why we were spoiled silly. We got everything we ever asked for and more. Well, I had whatever I wanted, mostly because my brother never really wanted much. He was never really the materialistic type, and he always wanted to work and earn the things he wanted, but not me. I have always, and well, I still love the things of life and hated having to work for it. So getting spoiled was just what I wanted. I attended the best schools money could afford. I was never a shy girl, and I knew how stunning I was, so I made sure I used it to my advantage. Damien also got his share of the gorgeous gene pool, and all the girls in school then wanted to be with him, but he never paid them any attention. He wasn't a bad guy or anything. He just didn't seem to be interested in them romantically. In addition to our looks, we both inherited our father's intelligence and made sure people knew it. We always graduated top of our class till we got to college. That was where a lot of things changed. We didn't want to attend the same university because we wanted to spend some time apart. So at the end of the day, I got accepted into Cal U to study arts, while Damien got accepted into Stanford to study computer engineering. You know, when I was in school, I decided to focus mostly on building a strong social life, but that didn't mean I was going to let my grades suffer. Oh no. I knew how smart I was, but I didn't want others to know because the last thing I wanted was to be labeled a geek. To cut the whole thing short, I became the queen bee and social butterfly of the entire school. I was never rude to anyone, but I made sure that people knew that I was of a certain class, and they had to check themselves properly before approaching me. Let me stop right here and explain something to you guys. I was not a bully or a snub when I was in college. I just carried myself in a certain way that made me stand out from the crowd, and I loved the attention I got. Guys were always trying to impress me with gifts and treats. I mean, I loved the gifts, but the guys never impressed me or showed me that they were different from the hollow, empty guys I always met. I wanted a guy who would get my heart racing or make butterflies fill my belly, although I never believed that those things ever happened to someone. I always thought that people said those things to add color to the tales they told. I wanted more than what meets the eye, and it seems like the answer to my prayers were about to be answered. On that very faithful day, I was standing at the bus stop, waiting for the bus. It's very important to remember that it was raining on this day, and I had attended an all-night event far from my school. Now I needed to get back to school and attend my classes, but the bus was nowhere to be seen. Just as I was getting out my phone to call an Uber, a car drove past me, and guess what? It splashed dirty rainwater on me. Ladies, please tell me what you would do if someone spilled coffee on your white jumpsuit. Would you let person go, or would you lose your mind? Now mind you, mine wasn't just coffee. It was muddy water, and it was spilled. It was sprayed. I lost my mind. I'm pretty sure I was ready to go all She-Hulk on whoever the driver was. I was so upset that I picked a rock and threw it at the car. I guess I hit the car because it stopped and the driver got out and angrily walked to where I stood. You would think that the decent thing he would have done was to apologize and properly give me a ride to where I was going, right? Well, sorry to burst your bubbles, but none of that happened. This fella had the nerve, the audacity, the right to start yelling at me, saying that I react his door mirror. I couldn't believe what I was even listening to. Would you believe that when I told him about the mess his driving had caused me, he said, and I quote, Oh, suck it up, princess, it's not that much of a deal. Excuse me? Not that much of a deal? My outfit was ruined and I was practically drenched in rain and muddy water, no thanks to him. But he didn't care. After 10 minutes of yelling, this creature literally left me there and drove off. I wish I was making this up, but I am not. I ended up missing my classes and catching a cold that day. I swore that if I met that thing again, I would rip him apart. But sometimes the universe has other things in mind. The day I graduated, my family hosted a party for me and invited a lot of people. The only person who couldn't make it was Damien, and it was because he had a lot of projects in school that he couldn't just leave. We talked on the phone a few hours before the party, and he told me that he wanted me to meet a friend of his whom he had invited to the party. Damien told me that I would surely take a liking to him because the guy apparently ticked all the boxes I set up, and I wouldn't lie. I was curious because this was the first time Damien was doing something like this. I asked him what his friend would wear to the party or how I would know him when I eventually see him. Damien said he had given the guy, whose name I later discovered to be Augustus or Gus for short, my number, and that he would call me once he arrived. I'd almost forgotten about the guy when my phone rang. The caller told me that he was a friend of Damien and that he was standing by the door of the venue. Now, before I go on with the story, ladies, I have a question. Why is it that if there are tens of unforgivable things people do to us, staining our outfits is one of them, and it's also unforgettable? Am I the only one who just can't get forgive easily? Oh, so it's just me then. Okay, back to the story. Now I was on my way to meet this guy that my twin brother wanted me to meet, and I was holding a cup of red wine in one hand. As I got close to the door, I saw a familiar car packed outside. No, it can't be, I said to myself. Just as I was clearing my head and assuring myself that my mortal enemy, the character that splashed me muddy water and proceeded to leave me in the rain without an apology, was at the same place I was guess who pokes his ugly head and has the nerve to flash me a breathtaking smile. No, I had to focus. Yeah, you guessed it. That monster who not only made me miss my classes that day, but also made me catch a cold. Without even thinking of the consequences, I poured my drink all over him. Now he wore a salmon-colored t-shirt and white pants with white sneakers, so you can be rest assured that my red wine left an impact. Before he could register what happened and say anything, I quickly said, "This is for ruining my day and making me catch a cold." And then I stormed out. Now I know that I might look childish and all because of what I did, but to be honest, I don't care. I was so angry that for the rest of the day, I was in a gloomy and foul mood. If that was the last time I saw that guy, I would have been okay, but sadly it wasn't. He actually reported me to my twin brother, and Damien called me. Now, Damien and I may not really agree on a lot of things despite being twins, but anytime someone reports one of us to the other, we always ask each other before jumping into conclusions. Damien asked me why I did what I did, and I told him what Augustus did that day. Damien immediately got upset and hung up, but I wasn't upset because I knew what was going to happen next. He was going to call Gus and probably cuss him out for his actions. He never called back the rest of the day, but I got a text the next day, and you would not believe who had texted me. Augustus had texted me to apologize and ask me out to lunch. Now, normally I would refuse, but who turns down free food? I accepted his invite, and once we met, he explained what happened that day. Carr said that his father had just told him that he was leaving his mom for a younger lady. Although it wasn't an excuse to be a butthole, but I forgave him, and to cut the long story short, we started dating. Gus wasn't what I expected. He was more incredibly hot, fully loaded, successful, sweet, older, not too old, but you get what I mean, and a complete gentleman. Gus was an engineer and the youngest one to reach his level where he works. Although he came from a well-to-do family, he always worked hard and earned all he had. It wasn't hard for me to see why Damien liked him enough to recommend him. Gus knew how to spoil a lady with gifts, affection, attention, time, and most importantly, food. It wasn't hard for me to accept his proposal when he asked me to marry him. Ladies, this man gave me a fairy tale exquisite wedding that when I recall what I did, I mentally slap myself. Now, marriage to Gus was supposed to be a wonderful thing, and even though I was working, he never stopped spoiling me. He always brought back gifts, planned surprise trips, took me on spa dates, and even supported me when I said I wanted to start a TikTok account. This man literally worshipped the very ground I walked on, and what did I do? Threw caution to the wind and decided to mess up big time. Now that you've got the gist about the both of us, let me tell you how I applied all the plans in the book with hopes to forever eat my cake and have it, but sadly I couldn't. I would have said grab a bowl of popcorn, but I think making a full course meal is better because this could take a while and you definitely don't want to miss any of the drama. Life with Gus was more than perfect and I was living every woman's dream, but something happened. I got greedy and wanted more. I didn't want to leave Gus or anything to be with another man. I wanted Gus and an extra person to satisfy me. Don't get me wrong or anything, Gus was something else behind closed doors, but I thought, why settle for vanilla ice cream when I can have chocolate chip flavor on top of that vanilla? Silly, right? Yes, I know, but it seemed like a good idea to me then. Gus and I didn't have kids yet. Even though he has a soft spot for kids, he said he would wait till I was ready. So I had no extra responsibility other than going to work and sometimes cooking for Gus. People of this planet. When I say that I read books, watched tapes and YouTube videos, as well as listened to various podcasts just to get myself ready and know how to go about my flavor hunting without letting my vanilla melt in my hands. I took down notes, played different scenarios in my head until I landed on the perfect plan, or so I thought. So I convinced Gus that I needed to change my work. I quit my current job and looked for a similar job, but in an area where no one knows either one of us. I told him that my colleagues were making things hard for me and he offered to talk to my boss. I just told him that would only make things worse. This man trusted me so much that he didn't even suspect any foul play and agreed. I eventually found another job on the other side of town I knew Gus wouldn't bother going to, and as though the universe was on my side that day. On my first day there, I saw my chocolate chip flavor and boy was he fine. Ladies, when I tell you that this man is so fine, like this maid literally made me speechless and stutter when the receptionist asked for my file. The way his clothes clung to his body, the way his hair was neatly cut and styled, the way he had this light stubble and beautiful dark skin with beautiful blue eyes that was hidden by his glasses. Like my Gus was one of those guys that made your knees weak just by looking at him, but the one I saw not only made my knees weak, it made them melt. I did my homework, and by the end of the day I got his name, age, and social handles. Don't ask me how. Now that phase one of my plan was complete, it was time to move to the next phase. I followed him on all his socials, but with a new and separate account. I made sure this ACC was private and had only my pictures. I bought a few followers and made the account look legit. I know. That was a lot, but you have to understand. I was a woman on a mission and I wanted everything to be perfect. I never made any advances towards him at work. I always kept it professional and only engaged in small talk when we went on breaks. I wanted to be that one girl he would want but can't get easily. After a few months, he started coming to my office to engage in conversation and sometimes would invite me to lunch. One day he asked me if I was married and I said yes. After that day, our work relationship improved and we became a work couple. While all this was going on, my home was still sound and filled with love and laughter. You see, I found a way to balance the two. Unlike some ladies that change once they start having an affair outside their marriage, I made sure Gus lacked nothing. I never changed and therefore didn't give him a reason to worry. One day, my work husband, whose name is Jordan, invited me over to his place to spend the weekend and I accepted. I know you would want to know what I told Gus or where Gus would be while I was with Chocolate Chip. Well, I told him I was going to spend the weekend with a friend and he didn't object to it. Ladies, this is why I found how to balance the emotions I shared. I didn't change or give Gus any reason to be suspicious of me, plus I technically told him the truth. Well, half of it. The date for the visit finally approached and I made sure I had everything was ready. I already texted and called all my friends. Well, they're just two people I know he'd call if he can't reach me, and told them what to say if Gus called. I drove off and was welcomed by Jordan with a deep and passionate kiss. After the kiss, he looked at me and I knew what that look meant. It was time to test and see if Chocolate Chip was as good as I imagined. To be honest, it wasn't. It was better than I ever imagined it to be. That weekend went better than I thought it would be, and that marked the second and last phase of my plan. After my weekend with Chocolate Chip, the people at the office knew were an item. Jordan never asked me to be his girlfriend, but I knew he already saw me as one. People always saw it together, and the ladies at the office loved it. I always spent every third weekend of the month with Jordan, and let's just say, I always needed spa treatment after those weekends. Gus wasn't left out either. He always picked the right days and moments, and when we were done, he'd spend the next day at home with me, pampering me and showering me with gifts, food, sweets, etc. I was getting the best from both sides, and none of them had a clue that the other one existed. I finally did it. I now had vanilla and chocolate chip ice cream, and boy did I enjoy it. You know, everything was going well, till everything blew up in my face. It was our annual work party at the office, and I actually invited Gus. Before you say anything, hear me out. I did this because I knew that he would be traveling for a business trip that day and wouldn't be back till the next day. He apologized and promised to attend the next one. After he left for the airport, I spent the next few hours getting ready before going to the work party. It was an amazing party, and it was surprisingly packed, and I enjoyed every bit of it. I was chocolate chip all night till I had to leave him for some girls' time with my female gossips. I spent close to an hour with them before deciding to go and tell Jordan that I was ready to go back home. When I eventually saw him, he was sitting down and he had this look on his face but quickly hid it when he saw me. I dragged him outside and asked him what the matter was. He just said he ran into his old childhood best friend, but he said his friend just discovered that his wife was cheating on him. I felt sad and said, "Why can't some ladies just be content and stay with one man?" He just chuckled. He asked if I was ready to leave, and I said yes. He accompanied me to my car. I gave him a long and intense goodnight kiss and drove home. I sang along to Players by Corey LeRae as I drove home. When I got home, I was stunned to see Gus in the kitchen cooking. When I called out for him, he turned and ran to me with a huge smile before hugging and kissing me. I asked him what he was doing there, and he told me that the trip ended up being postponed to a later date, so he decided to come back home. I hugged him again and went inside to shower and change. After we had dinner, we both laid in bed all cuddled up and just talked. He then told me that he had met an old friend that night. He said that it's been ages since he last saw each other, and that they exchanged numbers. He wanted me to meet his woman, but she had gone out with some friends, so he said he'd introduce us later. I told him I was happy for him, but I was already feeling sleepy, so I kissed him and wished him a good night before turning to face the other side and drift off. I was almost fast asleep when Gus tapped me and said, "Jordan said you should not bother ever calling him, and tomorrow you'll get the divorce papers from my lawyers tomorrow. Make sure you're gone by the time I'm back from work." After this statement, he got up and left the room. I couldn't sleep a wink the entire night, and the next day he left for work. I didn't know what to do or who to talk to. I couldn't figure out how Gus found out about Jordan. Then it hit me. That night, Jordan said he ran into his old childhood best friend, and then he told me that they found out that his wife was cheating on him. How? Where did I go wrong? I was careful. I took down plans. I followed the steps diligently. How? How could it blow up just like that? I've never seen Gus upset, but with the way he spoke last night, I wasn't about to stick around and find out. Right now, I'm in my car writing this with the divorce papers in my passenger seat and my things in the trunk. My phone has been blowing up because of my family, but I refuse to take the calls. Even Damien tried to reach me, even sending texts that he wasn't angry but that he just wants to talk to me, but I couldn't face him or even talk to him. You see, I told Jordan I was married, but that I had gotten a divorce. How ironic is it that I'm actually getting a divorce now, and to think I was celebrating that I had finally found a way to eat my cake and have it. Oh well, thanks for reading my story.